Today, right here on this channel, I think I'm going to try to end that vintage versus modern debate once and for all. Sick of talking about it. But we've got sales from this past month to kind of back up the argument. At least we're going to try, because this is the Wrestling Card Market Watch for May 2023. What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. Apparently everyone liked the new format that I'm doing with these monthly shows, so we're going to keep it going until I hear otherwise. We've got a ton of talking points from last month's sales of some items that I've picked out, so let's just go ahead and jump into it. A lot to discuss. The headline sale of the month: vintage versus modern. Now, I know this is a debate that's been going on for a few years now within wrestling cards. I would say pretty much since Panini kicked off is when all this talk started. And while I know this has been something that's been debated about in sports cards for years now, it seems like the amplification of this argument is even worse with wrestling cards. But today I'm going to try to debunk this myth once and for all, settling this argument. What side am I on? And to do this, I'm going to reference a tweet from Paul and Anand from the Wrestling Card Price Guide. Again, go check out Paul. We've got interviews with Paul on this channel in the archives. Lots of good content in the archives, by the way, when you get time. But him and Tony do a kind of similar video to this each month. And I'm going to read this tweet verbatim and post it on the screen for you. It's always a good month when we have a 5-figure wrestling card sale. Well, this month we had 4, with several others close behind, and a good mix of old and new. Tony and I will discuss this huge month in sales on our next monthly recap out next week. Now, at the time of recording, that video is already out, so go onto the WTC YouTube page, WTC TV, and check out that awesome conversation with Paul and Tony. It's always some of my favorite content out there. So with these 4 cards that have posted in the sales from last month, I want to kind of talk through some things that immediately came to mind as I saw these sales. We have 2 ultra-modern shiny Prism cards. We've got a high-grade Wrestling All-Stars card and a rare Japanese card that's signed. So there's a nice mix of things to discuss here. So hold on, stick with me through this. So only one of these was graded a 10. Well, I guess 2 if you want to count a BGS 9.5 as a 10. A lot of people do. So again, 4 cards, each one selling for 5 figures, but only 1, okay, or 2, is a PSA 10? How about looking at this aspect? Only one of these cards is an autograph. For the longest time in the wrestling card space, the ink on the card was the end-all be-all. Autographs is what everybody chased, and autographs is what people wanted to put their money into. But again, with these sales, I really feel like the tide is changing on that perspective. Let's look at this. Each one of these cards is a GOAT for their generation of that time in wrestling. It'll be interesting to see in the future, say 10 to 20 years from now, who's going to be up with this group of guys. It's going to be Roman Reigns, probably. One of these cards is a 1 of 1. One of these cards is a pop 1. One of these cards is out of 10, and one of these cards has a pop of 55. So even with a 1 of 1, a card that's essentially a 1 of 1 because it's only a pop 1 for now, the other one, only 10 of them, and the other one with a pop 55 again as of now, that pop 55 still brought a premium along with all of these other super rare, scarce cards. And I think the argument here could be that just because a card is plentiful doesn't mean it's not as valuable or sought after as some of these ultra rare limited cards that a lot of people like to push, that you need the 1 of 1, you need the out of 10, don't mess with anything else. Well, maybe this is an argument against that. Again, in certain circumstances, but I think it just needs to be kind of brought to the forefront. And lastly, let's talk about the group of fandom that surrounds the talent on these cards. One of these guys is somebody that a lot of wrestling fans can't stand, but he led the charge in an interesting time period for the WWE and has become a household name at this point, even outside of wrestling. One of the guys featured on one of these cards is probably at this point known more for his outside of the ring stuff than his in-ring stuff. The other guy, very split crowd of fans there. We have the nostalgic fans who grew up kind of idolizing him and recognizing him for what he is, of a boom period and maybe the biggest initial kickoff for wrestling that we know today. But the other half not wanting anything to do with him because of some of the things he's said or done in the past. And maybe those things aren't so politically correct, so they don't want to be associated with him. So all that being said, kind of zoom out. I know I threw a lot at you, but I've told you to stick with me. Zooming out, let's look at the perspective as a whole. When you look at these cards, all 5-figure sales, you have a perfectly rounded wrestling card, I'm going to call it collection right here. Or maybe I should say a representation of the wrestling card hobby. Yeah, I like that better. And I'm going to try my hardest to make this the final time that I talk about modern versus vintage on this channel. It might come up here or there, but I'm really tired of talking about it. I think with these 4 sales, that argument's officially dead. There's something out there for everybody, guys. If you like the older stuff and you like to chase more of the high grades or maybe the on-card autos, there you go, it's out there. If you like shiny stuff, more modern stuff, even if it's featuring older talent, and you like to chase that manufactured scarcity that a lot of the modern products have, then cool, go for it. One of these is not and never will be better than another. And everything I've talked about today and the pictures that I've shown of these sales, it really drives home the point that at the end of the day, no matter what side you're on, no matter what you prefer personally, they're all valuable and sought after by the collecting community. End of story. The totally awesome sale of the month, Hulk Hogan Ric Flair custom card, dual auto, PSA authenticated, $205 with $15 shipping. Remember on last month's Wrestling Card Market Watch video where I talked about that Hulk Hogan Thunder Lips custom card? And I talked about how it sold for such a low amount that guy probably lost his money? Well, we're going back to the well once again with yet another Hulk Hogan custom card, but a little bit different this time around. This card is just absolutely awesome and fun. Hence why it's the totally awesome sale of the month. This card, I will say, borrows from the 1999 WCW design that was put out by Topps. And while most people know this set for having a lot of those WCW autographs and the lore around that set, there's a lot of people out there still collecting the base cards in this set, and that's what this design was kind of borrowed from. We got a dual auto here, both in what appears to be white paint, and I think it really pops on the card, and I think it matches with the image. I love it. Let's talk about the photo for a minute. Look at that blood. You're going to see a lot of blood on a modern wrestling card? Probably not, especially in WWE and more of those modern products. Indie cards, yeah, we might see some blood on some cards, but a shot like this, you're probably just never going to get again. And I talk about it a lot, but when I see these bloody images like this, it sends me back to my childhood of walking in the grocery store and seeing that magazine cover that's got that bloody guy, and I'm like, oh man, what is this? I got to read more about that. And that's kind of what this card does. You look at that and you look at that image and I'm like, oh, I got to go find this match. I got to watch it even if it sucks. Like, it's going to try to suck me back into my childhood. And once again, nostalgia and those kind of connections and memories, that's why a lot of us collect. This card is slabbed and authenticated as far as the autograph goes by PSA, so you gotta love that. But for this one, you may look at that sale price, $205 with the shipping, and you may say the same thing that I said about the custom card on last month's video. You may look at the pricing and say, well, by the time he paid for the autograph, paid for the authentication, dealing with the taxes and fees through eBay, this guy lost money. Yeah, the seller probably did lose money on this, unless they've got some kind of in with like Hogan or Flair and they can get a lot of these things signed and not have to pay full price or, you know, something along those lines. But that's not what I want to focus on with this sale. I want to focus on this card just being totally awesome. Again, hence why it's in the totally awesome sale of the month. This is the exact kind of thing that could get somebody into collecting and be a collector for life. Or it could be something that maybe somebody's a belt collector, maybe somebody's a figure collector, but they see this card, they see the price, they're like, oh, I can get these two legends on one card autographed for this price, I'm in. Then maybe they go into cards, but maybe they don't. Maybe that's just that one card, but then the wheels kind of turn and they understand why people collect cards. And they get this opportunity to add this to their collection of collectibles, whatever that is. Somebody grew up liking Hogan, somebody grew up liking Flair, or maybe both. They get them both on the same card, slabbed, authenticated, autographed in one package for an affordable price. It's right there in your face, plain as day. You don't have to wonder what's the parallel or what's the pop count, because an average person just looking for something cool like this to have their collection, they don't care. And I think that's something that kind of gets lost within a lot of us that are diehard collectors in our little bubbles. I think sometimes we forget just the fun aspect of cards and what they mean to certain people. It gets pushed aside or kind of swept under the rug a lot of times in sake of value and rarity and what's Topps doing, what's Fanatics going to do when they take this over, what's Panini doing, why is AEW cards, why is Upper Deck not putting them out? It seems like that's kind of the stuff that focuses a lot of our attention, especially on social media and hobby news and anything like that. But sometimes we got to take a step back, look at cards like this and realize that there's casual collectors out there that just love this stuff. Who am I kidding? There's diehard collectors out there operating in the shadows, not on social media, that eat this stuff up. A lot of people don't care about the ultra super rare Prism stuff or one of ones in Immaculate or whatever it is. They just want the cards of their favorite people, and hey, if they can get autographs on top of that, that's awesome. And while I do love Prism and I love super high-end products as well, we have to remember that with these casual collectors, and maybe even some hardcore collectors that just don't talk about it a lot, I think a lot of times they're looking for availability and affordability over rarity, because they're looking for that connection, that thing that takes them back to a happier or more fun time in their life. And maybe it helps them escape the mundane activity of their daily life, going to work, or just, you know, all the obligations that come with being an adult. And closing out, this card does exactly that, does everything that I just summed up. Takes you back to a time. Awesome image. You got the autograph. And it's a heck of a deal for this price point. Surprising sale of the month, 1983 Wrestling All-Stars Salvatore Bellomo, autograph, PSA authenticated, $371. Who? I would say the majority of wrestling card collectors out there don't know who Sal Bellomo is. While everybody knows the Wrestling All-Star set at this point, I would venture to say that a lot of people don't know who Big Sal is. No, not that Big Sal. I'm talking about Salvatore Bellomo, the card we're talking about today. In fact, I grew up in the 80s, but I don't remember him wrestling for the WWF, even though he did. But what I do remember is his time in Eastern Championship Wrestling. That's right, that ECW, before it was renamed Extreme. Sal Bellomo was in the very early days of ECW. As always, once I found out that he was in this All-Star set and he wrestled in the 80s, not just ECW, I then had to go digging into rabbit holes trying to find out the history of his career, where he wrestled, any titles he held, etc. Because, hey, that's what cards do. We see something like this, we're like, oh, go here, go here, go here, doing all the research of what he did in the past. But all that aside, let's talk about the card. Why? You might be thinking, why did I pick this card? It's because of the price that it sold for, $371 for a PSA authenticated auto of Sal Bellomo, a guy that nobody really knows. We just talked about a Hogan and a Flair auto that got almost half the price of this one. Are you kidding me? What's the world coming to? What's causing all this?
I just doesn't happen! Come over there!
I'll tell you, it comes down to two things. Let's start off with rarity and scarcity. Again, we just spoke about in this video previous to this that that's not the end-all be-all for a lot of collectors. But when you go out and you're trying to look for autographs of Sal Bellomo, there's not a lot out there, especially if you're looking for one on one of these Wrestling All-Stars cards. So again, yeah, it's hard to find rare and scarce, but how many people actually want that? Well, that leads into my next thing, and that is set collectors. There's so many people out there trying to chase this whole entire 82-83 All-Stars rundown signed, myself included. And with so many people constantly chasing, you're having more and more of these battles over these hard-to-find cards. You can go out and you can find Ted DiBiase, you can find a Jesse Ventura, you can find a Greg Valentine. Those guys are all still alive, and they're still signing these Wrestling All-Stars cards. You can even go out and find, like, Hogan and Flair. Yeah, you're going to pay for it. But when you start looking at a lot of the more rare names, Sal Bellomo being one of them, because I don't think a lot of people were going out there and getting their Sal Bellomo cards signed. And this goes even further when you start digging into the weeds on sets and subsets and insert sets and parallel sets. You're going to find that there's, and in this case, you know, the autographed after the fact, trying to complete the full run of the signed sets. You're going to find that there's cards within these sets of names like Sal Bellomo that are a little bit harder to find, maybe, that demand more of a premium. We also saw this during the pandemic hobby boom with, I can't remember the card, but it was like a Pop 1 PSA 10 or something in the 86 Fleer basketball run. And there's a lot of people that are doing the set registry on that. So we had people battling and paying higher prices for, you know, a guy that comes off the bench or a guy that's not as big of a superstar as they would, you know, somebody that a lot of people really know. Same situation here. We just talked about the Flair and the Hogan autograph selling for almost half the price of Sal Bellomo. A lot of these cards that are signed, or these rare parallel cards that people are chasing the sets of or the subsets, they become set busters for a lot of people. And even on the surface, while some of these cards, oh, Sal Bellomo, you may be watching this and saying, Sal Bellomo autograph, I don't care about that. I'm never going to own that. It might not matter to you, but for set collectors or people that are working on a registry through PSA, these things really matter. And all of that is why last month you saw a Sal Bellomo autograph sell for more than a Hogan Flair dual auto. Still surprising, but it is what it is. The questionable sell of the month, 2022 WWE Prism Roman Reigns Champion Signatures Black 1 of 1 PSA 7 with a 10 auto, $3,000. Whoa, wait a minute. Roman Reigns on the questionable sale of the month? I thought Roman Reigns was the king of modern wrestling cards, or modern wrestling in general with this title run that he's going on. I thought Prism and Prism Black 1 of 1s were the end-all be-all, guys. I thought autograph cards were the most valuable things in the wrestling card hobby. Well, I guess all of these things are actually confirmed to be wrong. Or are they? Let's talk about it. My initial thought on this was maybe as a result of everybody throwing out their 1 of 1s trying to cash in with that rock sale that we had that set all wrestling card records. So they saw that and they're like, oh, well, I have this Prism Black. I've got this Prism Black. I'm going to put them out there, and if I can get half or 3/4 of what that rock did, then I'm going to be great. And I think the expectations outweighed the results with a lot of these sales. And a lot of us predicted that would be coming, but, you know, here we go. So that could be part of it. But another thing is that we have to remember with Prism products The autos are not the end-all be-all. They're stickers. Nobody likes stickers. And even look at a lot of the other top-tier Roman Reigns cards that have sold. Usually they're one-of-ones or they're parallels that are low and they're just the eye appeal. Maybe it's gold. Like that seems to be one thing that a lot of people go to. Those base parallels or the one-of-one, gold, whatever, that's what people wanted, not necessarily these autographs, even though this is a one-of-one autograph. Still trying to wrap my head around this one. I think we also maybe have to look at this championship signature because it's an insert set, if you want to call it an insert set, subset, whatever. And a lot of the times these cards, even if you have a one-of-one, does not bring a premium even close to being like the true one-of-one that would be the base card in that parallel. You also have to mention that this is a first-year Prism card. Just like that Rock, 2022. Okay, well, this is one of Roman Reigns' first Prism cards. But again, the sticker auto, the subset, insert set, that kind of, I think, turns people off a little bit. But still, he's one of the biggest names, and this is a one-of-one. I don't quite understand what happened here. Again, I brought up some valid talking points, but I don't know that you can confirm that any of those are actually what happened here. What do you think? Why do you think this card sold for as low as it did? A little bit questionable. What do you think about any of the other cards that I talked about in this video today? Let me know in the comments. Let's get a discussion going about this Roman card or modern no, actually, let's not talk about modern versus vintage. Well, I guess if you guys want to talk about it in the comments, go for it, but I don't know that I'll join in. But anything you want to talk about, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about the cards that we've talked about today or any topics that you want to discuss. And while you're down there and leaving a comment, make sure to check the links in the show notes to all of the ways that you can help show your support for my content, links to the eBay store, links to Patreon, links to the podcast I'm a part of, and much more. If this video or any of the other videos in the archives of this channel have brought you some value either now or in the past, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and tell a friend about the show. Spread the word about this platform and about wrestling cards. And until next time, click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content in the archives of this channel. See you next time.